Okay, guys, just waiting for people to come in and then we're gonna get started. Alrighty. Okay. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to We Believe You. My name is Najee, and I will be the main facilitator for all of We Believe You support group sessions. Just a reminder for those who weren't here last week, this group is a confidential peer support space designed for BIPOC folks who experience workplace racial aggressions. Our goal here is to provide a supportive environment for you guys where experiences can be acknowledged, some of the emotions that may come up can be explored, and meaningful connections can be made. So today's session focuses specifically on understanding the emotional and behavior impact work workplace racial aggressions can have on us individuals that are of minority race or ethnicity. And throughout our time together today, we'll explore how these experiences can influence our emotions, our thoughts, and behaviors. And then we'll spend some time reflecting on our own experiences as well. I just want to say thank you guys again for being here. And without further ado, we can get started. Okay. All right. So now we are going to go and just review a brief overview of today's session. So first we'll start with a brief review of group expectations and norms. We'll then participate in an icebreaker activity that discusses some of the common workplace emotions that come up for us. We'll watch a short video and then explore how workplace racial aggressions can impact emotional well being and our behavior. We'll also spend some time today reflecting on our personal experiences and identifying those connections between workplace encounters, emotions, and behavioral responses. Today's goal of the session is not to determine necessarily whether these reactions for both our emotions and behaviors are right or wrong. Rather, it is to recognize that workplace experiences can have meaningful effects on our emotional well being and our daily functioning. Which leads me to now our group expectations and our norms. So, for those who weren't here last week, I just want to give a brief review just so we're all clear and we're all on the same page. So first things first, confidentiality is really important to us here. We really ask that everyone respect the privacy of other group members and refrain from sharing other personal information discussed in group outside of this space, outside of this dynamic. We also ask that members refrain from recording sessions or discussing another member's experiences outside a group because that is a violation of confidentiality. We encourage respectful listening as well and ask everyone to allow others the opportunity to speak without any interruptions or judgment. We ask if you have anything to say while someone is talking, please use the comment section or the chat section, use reactions, and then wait your turn if you really have something to vocalize. Um, just a reminder again that participation is voluntary. So you can just be an observer. You don't have to necessarily participate, but we do encourage it though, because it helps with the flow of the group. But again, no one is required to share more than they are comfortable sharing. So please participate at your own will. We also ask that members remain present at all times during the group by limiting any distractions when possible. So please, if you have a private room to go into, or if you're away from your relatives, please, make sure you are limiting those distractions. Also, if you are in a place where maybe noise is above a certain level, to remain mute until you're able to speak and to participate in the group. finally, we just want to encourage each other to be mindful of time and respectful of everyone's opportunity to participate. Um, Before we move forward, I also want to mention that it is very, very, very highly suggested that you guys take any notes or journaling for your thoughts, as some things may come up that you may want to revisit with the group or just to reflect on outside of session on your own. Just remember to write those down in a private journal or even in your notes app on your phone, just so that you can get again the best experience out of this group. If there are no questions, I will move on into the icebreaker. So, to get us started today, I like to ask everyone to think about the following question. What is one word that can be used to describe your average work week? As we take a moment to think about that one word, I'll go first and use this time to talk about my one word that describes my average work week. I've said this before, I think in the last session. I am a student at Northwestern University as well as an intern therapist here at Soul Work Cafe. So I would describe my typical work week as a little overwhelming. Overwhelming would be the word. Trying to balance school and internship simultaneously, it does bring on those feelings of how will I have balance, how will I have a social life. So just thinking about how overwhelming that is for me is how I would describe my typical work week. But I will pause the recording for everyone else to participate, and I open the floors for everyone to talk about that one word that associates with their average work week. And I'm going to stop recording. Give me 1 second, and then we will participate. Oh, wait 1 second, guys. I'm gonna pause the recording, not stop it. Okay, the recording is back on, guys. Thank you so much for sharing um with this icebreaker tonight. I found that it was very interesting how one single word can summarize our experiences and then those set emotions and overall perception of our typical work week. Um, and as tonight's discussion continues, I do want us to keep those words in mind because our emotional experiences at work, they often tell us something important, right? About how we're experiencing that particular environment. So this leads me to the next slide. Oops, 1 second. Here we go. The next slide is common workplace emotions. As we look here on the screen, the words on the screen are very scattered. They have different sizes. They're just all over the place. And you may notice a variety of these emotional responses to workplace experiences. I put some positive ones, some neutral ones, and some that reflect more challenging experiences that may have brought us here today. And what's interesting about it is that these emotions don't simply appear out of nowhere. They're also not linear. And often there is a thought, an interpretation, or even a belief that is connected to an experiences that influences how we feel or that said emotion, like how we see on the screen. For example, I described my typical work week as overwhelming. And some of my thoughts that come with that were that, I often have to balance school and work. And me, I don't have a social life, things like that. And so for another instance, if someone describes their work week as um pleasant, right? Some thoughts that may come with that pleasant emotion is that, oh, my hard work is paying off. Oh, my coworkers and I get along. And in this field of counseling, we often recognize that there is a connection between our experiences, our thoughts, and our emotions. And ultimately, these thoughts and emotions, they lead to behaviors. So, the way that we interpret a situation can influence how we feel, and those feelings can influence how we respond. And, like as said, those behavioral responses. So, as we move through today's session, I invite you to think about that connection between workplace experiences, the thoughts that we have about those workplace experiences, and racial aggressions, and the emotions that follow, and ultimately, again, those behaviors that come up as a result of those emotions. So now, the video that we're about to watch, it just kind of reintroduces that racial aggression topic, specifically microaggressions today. And it highlights workplace experiences and their impact. And as you watch, I encourage you to pay attention to not only the emotions being expressed, but also to the thoughts and the beliefs that may be influencing those emotions and behaviors and physical manifestations that come up. So, again, this is a short video that discusses workplace racial aggressions and their impact, and just consider like what stands out for you, what comes up for you, and how are some of the things that are being portrayed in the video aligned with your experiences. So I'm going to play the video and then we're going to get right into the discussion. Uh-oh, wait a second. Let me actually stop recording so I can play the video, and then we're going to resume. Give me 1 second. Okay, guys, sorry about that. So yes, we are going to again watch a short video on um microaggressions, particularly today, reintroducing that topic of racial aggressions altogether, and their impact on emotional and behavioral responses. Again, I want you guys to consider what stands out for you, maybe how some of these experiences align with your own, and just what emotions that may come up as you're watching the things being portrayed in the video. So without further ado, I'm going to play the video and let me know what you guys think. Okay.
A microaggression is a subtle behavior that often unconsciously or unintentionally expresses a prejudiced attitude toward a member of a minority or marginalized group. As suggested by the name, microaggressions seem small, but compounded over time, they can have a harmful impact on an employee's experience at work, physical health, and psychological well-being, and can create a continuously hostile work environment. In fact, microaggressions have been referred to as death by 1,000 cuts because the slights and actions can be constant and cumulative. In other words, a snowball effect. The impact of microaggressions on members of the marginalized group can be greater than you think. Microaggressions can have physical, mental, and social effects on victims. The physical effects vary depending on the circumstances, but a victim may experience high blood pressure, depression, sleeping problems, substance misuse, eating disorders, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Microaggressions may ultimately harm a victim's performance at work and career potential. Research also suggests that subtle forms of interpersonal discrimination, like microaggressions, can be as harmful as more overt expressions of discrimination. They can cause a person to feel alone and isolated, wearing away at their self-esteem.
Alrighty, guys. Thank you guys for participating and watching the video. We're just gonna go right into it and let's just reflect, guys. Like, what are some things that stood out to you the most? Which parts of the video aligns with your workplace experiences? And again, what are some emotions that may have came up for you as you were seeing the things that were being portrayed in the video? While we're thinking about some responses, I'll go first and I'll just say that I really what stood out to me was this idea of microaggressions feeling like 1,000 paper cuts. That is a very perfect distinction or depiction, sorry, of how these aggressions again accumulate over time. And while they are simple as paper cuts, they shouldn't be as deep cutting or they're very surface level. I just find that it is so interesting how much these paper cuts can accumulate and cause more and more damage. Um, So that's something that stood out to me in the video. Of course, along with some of those emotional and behavioral responses. I thought that it was interesting as well that, while microaggressions or racial aggressions in general, they do accumulate as stressors, and stress can not only be mental, but they can be physical as well. Like, who hasn't or who has heard of microaggressions or racial aggressions being so detrimental to your physical health? Like, these are some things that we need to bring, to light and bring to our attention. So I want to hear from you guys. Again, I am going to pause the recording to honor you guys' confidentiality, but I really want to hear what are your thoughts. So let me go ahead and pause, and then we will get right into the discussion. Wow, y'all. Thank you guys so much for your input and your thoughts, your considerations. This is how the group groups, right? One thing we often see is that, again, these experiences can affect us emotionally long before we even recognize the impact that they are having on us in these environments. So before we dive into behavior responses, I wanted to take a look at some of the emotional responses that come up in these environments when workplace aggressions are present. Let me go to the next slide. There we go. Okay, guys. So, yes, workplace racial aggressions can contribute to one or more of the following. Some people may experience increased stress, or emotional exhaustion, and that can include irritability, and that may show up in interactions with our colleagues or our supervisors. Others may experience frustration, anger, anxiety, or even hypervigilance. Um, so, for example, anticipating future colleague interactions and or heightened awareness for racial aggressions, and always like thinking, oh my goodness, like what just happened, and over analyzing these situations that may come about, and not over analyzing in the sense of overreacting or being dramatic, but having just that sensitivity to these types of interactions with our colleagues. For some individuals, right, repeated experiences can contribute to self-doubt or low self-esteem or decreased confidence, um, which can include doubting your work skills or your competency at work, or even your ability to be in a professional setting. I know a lot of times, even with my personal experiences, I felt like I wasn't supposed to be in that space because of the workplace aggressions that were happening. And it's always important to remember that these racial aggressions are not an us problem. This is a systemic issue that has always been around and just has never been corrected. And finally, I want to bring attention to this idea of burnout. Um, Again, burnout occurs as the accumulation of stress in the workplace continues to happen. And so you may feel the feelings of, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to work here anymore. And so that is what leads us in to some of these behavioral impacts. So, emotional experiences, right? They often influence our behavior, as we said before. When individuals experience ongoing stress, exclusion, or racial aggressions, again, they may begin to respond differently in a workplace setting and not even realize it. Some of these have even happened to me, and I'm sure maybe as we are listing them and we're talking about them, you may be able to align them with your own experiences. But racial aggressions can influence behavior in several ways, such as withdrawal from the work environment. So that can include avoid speaking up during work meetings or attendance for workplace activities such as team bonding and things like that are supposed to bring, the team together. You may feel like you don't want to be a part of the team because, again, this is somewhere that you have to work, you have to get your money, you have to be able to provide for your family. Um, and just having these interactions may turn you off to some of these events that may occur in the workplace. Overworking to prove workplace competency. That kind of goes into that idea of self-doubt and trying to prove yourself. And that may often result in taking less breaks throughout the day to just prove that you're capable of being in that space, being able to work at such an establishment. Difficulty concentrating is a common one, because you're constantly thinking about what did this person just say to me, and thinking about those, again, those emotional reactions. Those may cloud our brains and cloud our focus, and take us away from the actual job that we're supposed to be doing. Somatic arousal and physical stress symptoms may emerge, such as that shallow breathing, the chest pain, sleep issues, and even high blood pressure, as said in the video. All of these physical symptoms may come up when we're anticipating those workplace aggressions, or again, experiencing them for what they are in the current time frame, in the present. Also, this is another one, another big one that may come up for us: calling off work more frequently. Again, why would we call off work more frequently? Because we're not comfortable in the space. These interactions, right? They may turn us off again to that work environment, and we might not want to deal with that. So finding time to use our PTO, and calling in sick may happen more often than we realize. And then lastly, one of the more unfortunate circumstances would be quitting our jobs. These experiences may make us so uncomfortable to the fact, or to the point that we may have to find another job. And for some people, that might not be an option. So it is all about, again, how we navigate these spaces so that we don't trickle down to the last resort of quitting the job, quitting your career, your occupation, your place of employment. This is important to recognize. These are important to recognize so that quitting your job is not something that may have to be a result of workplace racial aggressions. Okay, so now that we have learned a little bit about the emotional and behavioral impacts that come with racial aggressions in the workplace, I want to talk a little bit more about some of our personal experiences that uh, have happened in these environments. So I have three questions listed on the slide. First being, what emotions did you experience during the workplace racial aggression that brought you here? How did these emotions affect your behavior at work? And when did you acknowledge these feelings and or behaviors, if you did? Again, I encourage vulnerability, honesty. This is a safe space to say whatever is on your mind. Again, I will be pausing the recording so that we can have some deep reflection and be able to connect with each other, find some similarities, and just be able to understand each other's experiences for what they are. So without further ado, I'm about to pause and then we can get right into it. Guys, that was an amazing discussion. I really hope you guys had the opportunity to journal. Again, that is highly encouraged in the space because as you see, many perspectives come up and you're able to learn from each other and gain some insight on like what you guys have experienced. This is something that is very intricate and layered. And so everything can't fit in our minds. And sometimes we do have to write that down. But again, thank you guys for your willingness and your honesty and openness to participate in a group like this with such sensitive topics. Um I want to go to the next slide. I want to just start to close out this session by providing some takeaways, some key takeaways that have came up with the today's content. First, workplace racial aggressions have negative impacts on emotions and behaviors. It's okay to recognize that as well. Um, all emotional responses, again, are valid. They are understandable, especially within the context of each of you guys' experiences. All of our experiences are important, and it's just good to be able to express it, understand it, and be able to learn from those experiences, right? Another point of discussion, and that's something that has came up pretty often within this session, is that behavioral changes often reflect attempts to cope with workplace stressors and racial aggressions. Um, Again, some of us may have not have realized that prior to coming into this group today, but being able to understand those physical symptoms and those behavioral responses as attempts to cope is pretty important, because then we can replace those with more healthier ways of coping with such, again, sensitive content such as racial aggressions. Um, it is important, again, to not overlook these behavioral changes, but again, to understand them in order to make positive changes within our awareness. And then perhaps the most important thing, which again leads me into self-awareness. Self-awareness is an important first step towards recognizing these impacts, seeking support, and developing, again, healthier responses for moving forward. And to receive direct support, such as a group like this, We Believe You. So now that we have gone over the key takeaways for today's session, I do want to give a preview for the next session, which is session 3. We're going to be focusing on self-advocacy. Oh, sorry, self-advocacy and communication. And we'll just explore some individual ways that uh we communicate our needs, establish some boundaries, things like that. And just learning how to navigate difficult workplace interactions, such as, again, dealing with racial micro and macro aggressions, while maintaining that sense of professionalism and authenticity, so you don't have to feel like you are overexerting yourself and you're being accepted for who you are in the space. So, um, yeah, that'll be session 3. I really hope everyone here can make it. If not, you'll have access to a recording within your if you're on our email list. And so, yeah, that is the end of our session for session 2, emotional and behavioral impacts. I wanted to bring this slide up as a reminder to always keep us in contact. Connect with us at all of the listed social media platforms, email platforms, so you could be able to keep in touch with us and keep steady updates on what is new, what is going to be happening, all of that. We also just want to remind you guys that Soul Work Cafe is currently looking for new clients. We offer free 15-minute consultations, and such as myself, I am looking for new clients as well. So please feel free to look at my information on our website so that you can get to know a little bit more about me and to be able to understand what I do in the individual therapeutic space. Maybe I can help you, again, beyond the group space, and we can dive a little bit more into your personal experiences. But again, always looking for new clients, always looking for new consultations. Keep us Follow us on all social media platforms and keep us on the email listing for updates and any postings. I want to thank you guys again for your vulnerability, your honesty, your openness, and just your willingness to be here even after a long day of work. Yeah, I really appreciate it, and thank you for allowing the group today. I said that a lot. But thank you guys, and I hope to see you guys next week. Oh, I will be pausing the recording if there are any questions or comments or concerns about this session or the next session to come. Thanks again, guys, and have a great rest of your evening.